Welcome to JonGetsGames. Today, I'll be doing a full 3-player playthrough of Tiny Epic Quest. This game was designed by Scott Alms, and it puts each player in control of a band of heroes, and you're going to be traveling all across the countryside using various forms of movement, whether it be horses, rafts, or riding on the backs of griffins, in order to seek out a whole bunch of different things, solve some quests, and explore some temples to get some really cool items that can snap into the actual hero meeples themselves. I'll explain how the game plays while we're actually doing it, so let's jump in. Here's the table fully set up for our 3-player game. You'll notice there is this main board which is made up of these map cards. Each map card has 2 different discrete sections on them, and there are 4 special map cards that have castles. These castles directly match the player colors, and in fact this is where we start our 3 heroes for each of the players. We always orient the castles in this specific pattern, and then we fill in randomly all the rest of the cards so that they again match this layout exactly. We'll be playing the game from the perspective of the red player here, and this board shows a few different things. The first is that we start with a health of 6 and a power of 3, and in fact these are the current maximums for both of these statistics. If we want to be able to have more than 6 health, we're going to have to kill some goblins to increase it, and if we want to have more than 3 power at a time, we're going to need to learn some spell books. Down here we have some trackers to show how far we are away from getting these legendary items, but before we're going to be able to equip these onto our heroes and have their great effects, we're going to have to explore some temples, but I'll get into how all that stuff works soon. Tiny Epic Quest splits its turns up between a day phase and a night phase, and during the day we're going to be moving our players all around this world map, and then during the night we're going to evaluate some of the locations where our heroes have landed. So in order to do a day phase action, it's somewhat simple. The starting player is going to pick one of these 5 movement types. We have by foot, by horse, by raft, by ship, and finally by griffin, which is probably the coolest one thematically. And what happens is that player is going to pick one of these, and I think that we want to do by horse, and then we will do one movement action based on this specific criteria, and then each other player will get to do have an option of doing that specific move action as well. So the way by horse works is, if we look down here, we can take one of our heroes and move them as far as we want to in a horizontal pattern. When you look out on the map, you'll notice that when you move horizontally, there are these roads that always go back and forth, so you're essentially taking a horse down a road. So let's go ahead and take one of our heroes, and we have to move at least one map tile off. So we could not move to this half of this one specific card, for instance. We got to go at least here or at least there. We're also not blocked by having other players in the way, so we can just zoom back and forth as far as we want to, but I think we want to jump over here. And when you move to a new card, you can decide which side you want to go onto. This side happens to have a fighting pit where we can attack these goblins right here, and the other side is a mushroom grotto, which would make us conjure up 2 magic for the magic track. I don't think we necessarily want to do that yet, and I'll explain how all that works pretty darn soon. So for now, I think let's go over here and fight goblins. Now, thematically, in this game, the goblins are coming out from the underground. They're kind of attacking the countryside, so it is definitely a good thing to go ahead and attack these. We're going to get points for it, but there are oftentimes other incentives for attacking the goblins, but we don't actually do the attack until the night phase. So we have performed our 1 move action now. We go to the blue player to see if they want to do a horse move action as well. Now, if they want to, they could choose to idle instead, wherein they don't move any of their heroes, and if any of their heroes are in a castle of their own or the courtyard of an opponent's castle, then they can generate 1 health and 1 power. But right now they're currently pegged out at the maximums on those, so there is definitely no incentive to not move. So they are going to move, but before we show where they go to, I want to show you why we're moving to these specific spots. Over here we have 3 quests that are available. In fact, there are always 3 quests that are face up at any point in time, and these are going to dictate some of the reasons we're going to go to places. So let's take a closer look at them. Quest cards are split into 2 different chunks. The top is a requirement in order to grab the quest, and the bottom is going to be a reward. Now, this is also probably a good time to mention that this is a prototype version of the game, and the rules are still being tweaked. So the version I was sent actually had victory points on the quests themselves, but that is no longer the case, so they've been kind of crossed off, so just ignore that stuff. And there are 2 different types of quests as well. We have these basic quests down here, which just mean that once you move your heroes in a specific orientation on the map, you take this quest card, you tuck it underneath your player mat, and then you get a bonus. But the other kind is these treasure quests right here. These are more like, I guess, a treasure map, if you want to think about it that way. You need to put your people in a specific orientation again. You see this one says, have 2 heroes fighting goblins. And this is part of the reason why we moved our hero onto that goblin pit, because, man, it would be great to be able to try and get this bow treasure quest. It's a very cool item. But when you take this quest, you don't get the item immediately. You essentially know which of the temples the item is now hidden in, and we can now go delve into that temple and try to find the item. So it's a 2-step process for getting these treasure quests. With that in mind, the blue player unfortunately decides they are going to follow suit. They're going to ride by horse over here to this goblin spot over here so they can fight the goblins. The yellow player decides they want to move one of their heroes over to this ice temple. They want to explore it, and when you go into a temple, you need to announce what you're trying to find in that temple. So at this point, the yellow player says they are looking for their legendary staff. And this is because when you look at their player mat, you'll notice that on their staff's track, the first one is this ice temple. Once they have fully explored that temple, the staff is actually going to move over to here, and they will then need to go into this temple of the water. And once they fully search this one, then they'll have access to it. So in order to get these legendary items, you actually have to delve into 2 separate temples. But these are really good items for sure. They give 3 points at the end of the game, and the bonuses they have are significantly powerful. And with that, we've all had the opportunity to move by horse, so we flip this over. It's now gray, and we go to the blue player who can pick one of these 4 remaining movement types, and then they can evaluate it. We are going to keep doing this until 4 out of the 5 movements have been picked, and only then will we move into the night phase. Blue decides they want to move by Griffin, which is a diagonal movement as far as you can go with one of your heroes. Blue grabs one from their castle, and they move diagonally down to this mat, and they are going to fight these goblins. And this is why it's unfortunate for us, because we did not have the ability to block the blue player from getting 2 of their heroes attacking goblins before we were able to get there. And because of that, the blue player is now able to grab this treasure map for the bow. We were hoping to get it, but they just got there first. This is because they have 2 heroes that are fighting the goblins, so this goes into the blue player's area. And now we see that they need to complete the Force Temple in order to actually find this weapon. And what this weapon does is it allows their heroes, well, the hero who has this specific bow, to attack goblins from an adjacent mat. So it's a very powerful thing, but the moment this gets taken, we draw another one from the top of the deck. We see this is another treasure map card, and this allows the player to grab the flute. So instead of allowing a player to attack better with this item lets a player always take a Griffin movement instead of the normal one. So much more flexible with the movement of that specific hero. It's pretty cool. And you can grab this one if you have heroes on 2 different map tiles with your opponent's pieces on them. So I don't think anybody is doubled up just yet. You slide completed quests underneath the bottom half of your player board, so I think for now I'll put this incomplete treasure map over here so the blue knows they need to go to the Forest Temple to grab this bow. And we also now flip over the starting player marker so it does not have that exclamation point. We do this as soon as somebody takes 1 quest within a given turn. Essentially, this just means if nobody takes any quests for an entire turn, we will burn one of these and cycle a new one through. Yellow decides to use this Griffin movement to go diagonally down over here, and they're actually going to drop off in this spell library here. Now you'll notice this is the spell library for this specific symbol. It looks kind of like an S. And when you look at the magic mat, you'll notice that that matches the first book on this bookshelf of spells we want to learn. So it makes sense. That is the easiest one for each player to learn at the beginning of the game. So that is the one that Yellow is hoping to learn during this night phase. So now we also get to do a Griffin movement, and I think we probably want to follow the yellow player and just jump down here and try to learn the spell as well. Each player can have one of their heroes in one of these spell libraries at the same time, so we can all be kind of friendly, learning the same exact spell. Our other options were not too great. Like this one over here, we cannot go into this fighting pit with the goblin. Only one hero can be there at a time. Also, this right here would gain us power, but we're already maxed out on power. And finally, over here, we also have a spell library, but if you'll notice, that symbol matches the final book on the shelf, so we're nowhere near being able to learn that on this turn. And I'll explain how you learn these spells once we get to our first night phase of the game. So I think this is probably going to be our best option for our turn. And this seems like a pretty good time to show you the victory point grid that we're going to be looking at once the game is over. This shows you how many points you gain or lose depending on how many spells you've learned, goblins you've killed, and quests that you have completed. So in this first night phase, we are going to be trying to kill a goblin and trying to learn a spell. So both of those are quite good for getting us out of the red. It's also worth noting that this game will be a maximum of 5 turns long. So there will be 5 night phases to work with. So let's go ahead and use that first night phase to try and knock 2 of these things out. Yellow decides they want to move by ship. And the way this works is you can grab one of your heroes that is on one of the map tiles that are on the outside of the board, and you can pick them up and move them to any other map card that is on the outside. So essentially you're just going around the edges of this map. So they set sail with this hero, and they go all the way around the outside, and they plunk down over here into this mushroom grotto. You'll notice that the way these work is you get an immediate benefit as opposed to the other ones which are going to be evaluated during the night phase. This one says that they immediately conjure 2 mushrooms. So they move the magic marker up twice on this magic track, and I'll explain the details of this when we get to the night phase, but the short version is the farther this token is along, the more likely that players will be able to actually learn the spells. They are sort of helping us in the process of doing this, but at the end of the day, you have to sometimes help your opponents to also help yourself. By doing this move, they also complete this quest, which is another one of these treasure maps. This one said have 2 of your heroes on map tiles with opponents, and they have this tile over here and this one. So they now have the map for this flute, and unfortunately for them, it is found in the Ice Temple, and they are already in the Ice Temple. However, when they moved into that temple, they declared they were searching for their legendary staff, not this flute. So in order to get this flute, they are going to, at a later time, go through the Ice Temple once again. But for now, they're going to go ahead and slide this under here. That wasn't the main reason that they went over to this location, but it's a nice thing for them to have as they work forward in the game. And it's also a potentially completed quest for them at the end of the game, although they do have to find the flute in order for it to be completed. We now draw a new quest from the top, and we see this one is you can study with foreign wizards. In order to complete it, you have to have your 3 heroes on 3 separate castles, but you can advance twice in the spell library. This is a really powerful effect. I guess the reason it's so powerful is because if you have all 3 of your people spread out into castles that are not actually doing much interesting out on the player mat. And right now, I don't think anyone's particularly close to this, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of us try to angle in on this, because learning 2 spells, 2 spell books immediately is a really good thing to have. We now get to travel by boat. I think we're going to set sail over here, go all the way around to the very top of this fire temple. And the moment we get here, we are going to announce that we are going to be looking for our legendary sword. Looking at our player mat, you'll notice that this is the first in the 2-step process in order to grab this sword. The second one is going to be exploring the Ice Temple. And the reason the sword is so great is because once a hero has this sword, then that hero can spend power at a 1-to-1 ratio in order to do damage to goblins. So they essentially do a very good job of killing goblins, which is a good thing to do while you're playing the game. And Blue decides they are going to set sail with this hero right here. It does not really make sense to be fighting 2 sets of goblins in the night round for the most part, because you have to, you get a certain number of these icons that do damage to the goblins, and you have to split them between your heroes. They won't both activate on them. So they're going to pick this person up and they're going to sail them all the way over here and land in this mushroom grotto. And the text over here says that you can deal 2 damage to a goblin that one of your heroes is fighting. So that's actually pretty nice for them. The moment they sit down over here, then this goblin over here is going to take 2 damage. We show that by rotating the goblin counterclockwise once, because each of these first 2 steps costs 2 damage to do. This final step over here only costs 1 damage, and finally once you switch it over to the skull side, then this goblin gets killed. And this is really good because you pretty much need to kill the goblin in a single night phase. So that is 2 less hits that they need to land on the goblin before they can take him. Everybody has done their ship movements, so we can flip this over, and now we can do one last primary move action where we get to pick between these 2. Of course, on turn 2, the blue player will get to choose twice in a given round as opposed to us, so we need to figure out if we want to go by foot or by raft, which is up and down. But before we decide how we want to move, I just realized that we actually completed a quest. So this one right here says map the land, and we did this when we moved our person by ship over to this location right here. And the text up at the top here says that you need to have all 3 of your heroes at least 3 spaces away from each other, and none of them can actually be in your castle. So we have this hero who is 1, 2, 3 from this one, and this one's way far away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, very far away. So we have mapped the land, which is great. This gives us a benefit of 2 health and 2 power, which would be great if we weren't maxed out on health and power. On the subsequent turns after we do the night phase, we are going to start to lose health and power at this night phase, so these abilities will be good, but this is also just worth victory points to us at the end of the game, so I'm glad we have it. Of course, this means we need to draw a new quest, and this one is, looks like it is yet another treasure map. This one says you need to, let's see, move by ship. You need to return to your castle from the farthest space away from your castle, and this unlocks the ability to find the boomerang that says when the goblins attack us, you can attack the goblins back. Wow, that's a very powerful item right there, but of course, it's a super situational thing. For us to grab this map, we would need to be, let's see, over here and then move by ship back to our castle. It could happen as we're playing the game. We might try to make that happen, but we'll go ahead and throw that into the quest row, and now let's see if we want to actually move. And I'm not sure that we do, because right now all of our people are in pretty good spots. This hero is going to try to learn a spell, this hero is going to try to delve into this temple, and this hero is trying to fight this goblin. And there are a couple things we could do. For instance, we could take this hero here and move them up to this mushroom grotto, which the text here actually says that we could move up once in a temple that we're exploring. So we could just move this person over. But ultimately, I think that doesn't really make sense for us to do, because when we are in the night phase, all of these different things are opportunities that are going to become available for everybody at the same time. So I kind of want to be spread out like this so we can catch opportunity as it actually comes. If I move over here and suddenly we roll a whole bunch of attack symbols on these adventure dice, which I haven't actually shown you yet, but we're going to see them super soon, then I would be really bummed if we had the option of killing this goblin, but we didn't, and then all those dice faces came up. So let's go ahead and not actually move anybody, but we do have to pick one of these regardless. So I think, well, let's go ahead and do by foot. It's the one that's probably going to give our opponents the least flexibility, I suppose. I guess when you go by foot, you can move once in orthogonal or diagonal directions, but the other one is by raft, which lets you go up and down these rivers on the overall map. And I guess, let's see, either way, when we look at what our opponents are going to do, I suppose, yeah, no, we'll go ahead and do this, and we are now going to choose to be idle, and if we had a person in our castle, we could generate a health and a power, but we're already maxed out, and we don't actually have anybody in castles, so we are just kind of passing this turn because we really like the way we were able to move in the first 3 moves of this turn. Blue decides they want to move by foot down over here into the green player's castle area. Now, you only ever put your people in the castle that matches the colors, so for everybody else, they go into this little courtyard area, but they're effectively the same. And there is nothing interesting to do here, but it's becoming pretty obvious that the blue player is posturing to try and go ahead and do this study with the foreign wizards. They already have their own, one of their heroes in their castle, so by moving here, they now only need to put their last hero in a 3rd castle, so they are hoping probably to grab that quest early on in the next turn, but by doing so, they're not going to have as many interesting things to do in the night phase for this turn. There's no reason for yellow to leave this hero here because they were in a Mushroom Grotto, which is just a one-time ability. Now, they only have 3 options. They could move over here, they could try to learn this spell, but it's really not one that's good at all. This one is way down that bookshelf, and there's really no reason for them to go into our castle, especially considering it's pretty obvious the blue player is going to grab that quest before any of us do. This spell is also not one, well, I guess technically this spell is close enough they could potentially get it on this turn, but I don't think they necessarily want to push their luck there. They are going to jump over here and do this Mushroom Grotto, which says they can advance their hero in a temple 1 room. This lets them move this hero in the Ice Temple up once, and this probably makes sense for the yellow player to do because they really want to complete this Ice Temple so that they can probably get back into it and try to find that flute. They essentially have 2 things they want to do in this temple, so they want to get it over with as fast as possible. With that, we've all done our foot movements, so we flip this over, and we are now done with the day phase. Again, we go until 4 out of these 5 have been chosen, so let's go ahead and shift into night, where these dice are finally going to get rolled. The night phase starts with the starting player, which is still us. And what happens is that player decides if they want to continue to adventure throughout the night or if they want to rest. And the way we know that is we have this card right here. Right now, if this says quest, it is probably going to say adventure or pursue or something like that on this side, and then this side says rest. So essentially, this means do they keep pushing their luck to do stuff at night, or do they go ahead and tuck in and stop for the night? So we are definitely going to keep pushing on at the start here. Nothing has really happened yet. So we are now going to roll these dice up. We now split these dice up into their different types of faces. These over here are going to be evaluated in order for everybody, and then these are kind of a simultaneous thing that everybody gets to do. So the very first thing that happens is the goblins are going to attack all of us. And the way this works is you figure out how many of these goblins there are, and then they attack each player kind of in a wave until all of the attacks are depleted. Right now there is only 1 goblin attack, and this does a single damage right now because our current magic level is pretty low. In fact, the magic level is currently at 0. We know that because the little token is still in this section. So if this token moved all the way up over here, then each of those goblin attack dice faces would now do 2 damage, and if this token made it all the way over to this section, they would actually do 3 damage. So for now, it's just 1 damage. So with only 1 of these dice, there's only going to be 1 damage total, and that means we are going to have to take that damage, and once we do, it will be depleted, and no one else is actually going to get hurt. So it's a bit of a bummer to be the starting player in this situation. However, we are a band of heroes. We are not helpless against the goblins' attacks, so we can spend 2 of our power in order to defend 1 of these goblin damage. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll push this down to the 1, and we don't actually take the damage, and the reason for that is because we're about to get some more power back. This is because now that we've evaluated these goblins, we can go onto this power die. This face means that players get to charge up, and this works in the same way that the goblins work. So there is 1 power to be distributed, and it goes at a 1-to-1 basis. So we are going to get that 1 power, and then nobody else is going to get any because it will be depleted. It's also worth noting that as the magic level goes up, this power die will also be modified. once we get into this section, that power die will actually do nothing, and if we get all the way to the end with this magic track, that power die will actually do 1 damage to players. So we go back up to 2 power, and that depletes the 1 power that was going to be given out, so nobody else gets any. Now that we're done evaluating these two, we can all work on these simultaneously. And it's important to note that each of these dice can only be applied to a single hero for each player, but each of these dice can be applied to each player. So everybody gets access to this 1 map, everybody gets access to this 1 torch, and everybody gets access to this 1 damage against goblins. Let's go ahead and start with the map and the torch. As you can see, for our hero in the Fire Temple, they only need 1 map in order to move once along the track, so we'll go ahead and consume it doing that. The yellow player only needs 1 torch to go here, but for subsequent movement, they are going to need 2 torches in 1 given die roll in order to move forward, but they only have 2 more spaces to go until they potentially find that treasure. And since the blue player is not exploring any temples, they don't do anything with those dice, but we can now look at this one, and we got 1 damage towards goblins, and that means that unfortunately for both us and the blue player, we don't get to do anything. Much like these temple tracks, in order to do the tick of damage on these 2 goblins, we need to have 2 damage in 1 given die roll. So this is a bit of a waste. We are now done with this 1 die roll. And we now give the dice to the blue player, and they now get to decide, are they going to continue adventuring or are they going to rest? They are definitely going to continue, so they're going to go ahead and roll the dice. Well, this is pretty bad for everybody. I think probably us the most. That is 3 goblins, so that's going to be 3 damage, and the blue player decides they're going to spend 2 power in order to mitigate that damage. The yellow player is going to spend 2 power to mitigate that damage, but we have, well, I guess we do actually have 2 power. Let's go ahead and do it. So we are at 2, so we're going to go off the board with this power token in order to not take a damage, and now everybody gets to evaluate these 2 torches, but the yellow player is the only one who's in a temple that needs torches. They got pretty lucky with this. So with these 2 torches, they get to move forward just like that, and we've now evaluated the dice again, so we're going to pick up these dice, give them to the yellow player. Yellow decides they definitely want to keep going, so they're going to roll the dice. Alright, even though this is the yellow player's die roll, this was really good for us, but first we have to evaluate the goblins, so that is 1 damage. The yellow player will have to take it because they only have 1 power, they don't have 2 in order to defend, so they go down to here, and now we finally got one of these magic die faces, and what happens is for each of these dice, we're going to move this little tracker up by 1. And both yellow and us are really hoping to get this magic tracker into at least this area when we eventually decide to rest, because we see we're both trying to learn this spell book, which is 1 book away from our current indicators. And that means we are going to need to get 1 of this little fairy power in order to do so. So getting into this area means we would be able to learn that book. If we went even farther, it wouldn't really benefit us. But if we had, say, pushed our luck and put one of our heroes into a temple that was like this spider right here, we could potentially have learned that on this turn, but we'd have to wait until this token got all the way to the end. And I'm pretty sure we would have been exhausted by that point. And you become exhausted when you lose all of your health, and at that point you are forced to stop. So I think it made sense for this first turn of the game for us to shoot for the first one, and things are starting to look pretty good for us to be able to pick that up. We just need to get 1 more mushroom before we rest. Now we get to evaluate these maps, and we are the only person who is delving in a temple that needs maps. And getting 3 of them is awesome, because that means we get to go 1, 2, using all 3 of those maps. And once again, if we had another one of our heroes in a temple that needed maps, then we would not be able to use those maps for anybody else. You consume them when you actually put them into a given hero. With that, yellow is done with their die phase. It goes back to us. We decide we are going to continue going. We are getting kind of close to doing some stuff that we really want. We want to stick around and hope to not get smacked too hard. Let's see. So that is 2 goblins. That means that we are going to take 1 damage. That brings us down to 5. And the blue player, they only have 1 power, so they are also going to take a damage. At that point, these are exhausted. There are 2 of these power dice, so we are going to gain a power, which is nice. And the blue player is going to gain back a power. And now there is just this single torch, which doesn't actually help anybody because the yellow player needs 2 more torches in order to get to this final section over here. So let's grab the dice. This goes to the blue player. They are definitely sticking around. They haven't done any damage to that goblin yet. Let's see. Nope, it's not going to happen on this round either. The goblins are going to do a damage back to them, however. I think they are going to spend their 2 power in order to not take this damage, and then they will generate 1 power right back. Nobody else gets anything. Oops, before we actually evaluate that power, we did get 1 of these magic dice. This pushes the token into the section that means that both yellow and red, we will be able to learn this tome as long as we rest. If we end up becoming exhausted, then we don't actually get to learn that spell. So we have to be careful not to actually lose all of our health before we rest because we definitely want to learn this book. Once again, this fist and this torch don't do anything because we need 2 fists in order to attack these goblins, and yellow needs 2 torches in order to finalize that temple. So this is now going to move over to the yellow player, who decides they want to keep rolling the dice. They would love to be able to finish out this ice temple by getting 2 torches. And oops, spilled things around. Oh man, they did get it. Let's see. First of all, let's reset their power. I believe it was at 1. And this was not only a good roll for yellow, but it was a good roll for us as well. So first of all, let's go ahead and add 1 magic to the track. This of course means we are getting closer and closer to the goblins doing much more damage to us. And with these 2 torches, the yellow player is able to move to the end. They actually leave their hero here. They're only going to pull them back and actually evaluate completing the temple once they rest. And now we have these 2 maps available, and that means we get to do the same thing. So it now comes back to us, and I think at this point, well, let's see, this person has learned their spell, that person over there has completed the temple, and this person has done nothing against this goblin at all. We just have not seen duplicates on the fist symbols when we roll these dice. I think at this point, considering if we roll these and get a bunch of these, the goblins, it's really going to hurt us. I think we can go ahead and stop. We need a lot of progress on here. If we had maybe done some damage already, maybe it'd be worth sticking around. But we haven't done any to this goblin. There's just no way to think that that might actually happen at this point. So let's take our card, flip it over to the rest side. We're going to pass the dice over to the blue player, and we are now immediately going to pull back any heroes that are fighting goblins or learning spells or on the treasure rooms of temples, and we're going to put them back into our castle. Anybody else does not actually have to come back, so if, for instance, this person had not completed the temple, I could have left them in that temple as they're trying to learn it, so that on the next phase they are much closer to the end in order to evaluate the temple. The next thing we have to do when resting is we can move this legendary sword up to the next chunk, so now we just need to send a hero through the ice temple in order to finally have use of this. And what this says is that we can spend a power in order to do +1 fist against a goblin. And as you can see, a couple times in this one night phase, we've rolled a single fist. If we had the ability to spend a power to make that a double fist, we would be way more efficient at actually killing those goblins. And killing goblins is good. You know, we'd be able to increase our maximum health amount as well as just give us points at the end of the game. And since we're trying to learn this level 1 spell, we can do so because it's only 1 step away from our current queue position, and the magic track is currently in the 1 fairy section. So we can go ahead and move up here. That means that we now have a maximum power of 4, because it's 3 plus the number of spells we've achieved up to a maximum of 10. We need to bring all 3 of our people back to our castle, and the blue player now decides if they want to roll the dice. They're already at 5 health here. They haven't done any damage to this goblin. Again, they're in pretty much the same boat. They haven't done too much at all in this night phase. And at this point, things, you know, if they, well, I guess they did. They only need to do 3 damage to this one because they did put their person over here to spin this goblin over once. I think they're going to go ahead and push their luck. They're going to roll the dice. And that didn't end up hurting them, so that's good. There are 2 of these powers, so the blue player gains 1 power, and the yellow player is also going to gain a power. There's 1 of these magics, so we're going to move the tracker up by 1. This is now getting very close to getting very painful when that gets rolled, and this map and this torch are not going to do anything for anybody, so we're going to pick up the dice and see if the yellow player wants to roll them. And they decide there's really no reason for them to roll the dice. They don't even have a goblin they could potentially attack, so they're going to flip over to the rest side. That means they are going to go ahead and pull back their people from the various parts of the board, which means this hero from the temple is going to go back to their castle, and this hero is also going to go back to the castle. This one over here could come back to the castle if they want to, but I think at this point, they're going to go ahead and leave them over there. Yellow gets to move their legendary staff up 1 tick. Now they just have to go to the water temple in order to have access of it. And we see down here, they can spend 1 power in order to add +1 to the magic level for that one particular hero. So the hero who has the staff is going to be far better at learning those new magical spells. Speaking of magic spells, yellow also gets to learn the first spell tome. So it comes back to the blue player because we are already resting, and it's important to note that any positive and negative die faces only affect people who are still adventuring. Anybody who's resting, they're not going to take damage, but they're also not going to gain power. They want to kill that goblin. And wow, that was a really good roll for them. First of all, they are going to get to take 2 of the strength, or the power, that is, because again, they're the only ones who are still adventuring. They can only take 1, I suppose. It's going to go up to 3. That is their current maximum. But now we're going to increase the magic by 1. And that does push this token into the 2 section. And that means that now every single goblin is going to do 2 damage, and both those damage will go to the blue player because they're the only ones in, and they're no longer going to be able to generate power from the die when that gets rolled. But the good news is that blue now gets to do damage to this goblin. They have the 2 fists, and that's what they needed. So this shifts over, and now they only need to do 1 more damage. And as I mentioned before, when you rest or become exhausted, you're going to have to pull your heroes back from the goblin pit. And that means that these are actually going to be resetting at the beginning of every round. So you cannot do some damage to a goblin and then come back and try to finish it off on a later turn, which is part of the reason why blue's pushing their luck. Speaking of pushing their luck, blue is going to go for it. They just need 1 more fist icon. And they got it. Ooh, actually, lucky them. They didn't even get any goblins, so they're not going to take the 2 damage. Let's see here. They would not be able to get any of the power anyway. They didn't roll any dice for it, but the magic is going to go up 1 more time. We now see it's just 1 away from maxing out on the track, and if it gets all the way over there, then wow, that really hurts when goblins are rolled. Fortunately, blue once again rolled the fist they needed. They actually only needed 1 in this case, so that is going to tick this goblin over to the final side. It's going to kill this goblin. And they put that dead goblin into their area, and I'm going to go ahead and point this little skull at the 7 to show that they now have a maximum health of 7 because it is 6 plus every single one of these goblins that they've killed. So with that, the blue player is now done with this roll, and they are not going to roll these dice again. They've done everything they wanted to do. They're going to flip this over to the resting side, and this hero must return back to their castle. With that, the night phase is over, so we can go ahead and put these dice over to the side, and now we have to do some resolution things. We first need to reset the magic track all the way back to 1. And next, every single goblin that's still out in the countryside is going to get angry. We're going to flip them from their passive side to their aggressive side. And again, this is a prototype version of the game, so I'm going to flip it over to this side with this kind of 3 victory point thing. This is for the way the game used to work, but for now, we're just going to consider this an aggressive goblin. And in order to flip these back over to their passive side so that they can be attacked, somebody needs to land on their specific space. Also, there's now a penalty of 1 power if a player wants to move a hero through a map card that has an aggressive goblin on it, because they effectively need to deal with the fact that these goblins are kind of like rampaging around the area, and they have to spend a little bit of power to negate that as they're passing through. And now we need to fill in any of these goblin portals with new goblins, and we put them on through their passive side, which signifies that they're just kind of climbing out of the mountain. They have not had the ability to kind of wreak havoc on the surrounding landscape just yet. At this point, we move the starting player token over to the blue player, and since it does not have the exclamation point side, we're not going to be clearing any of these quests out here in the row. So what we now do is we do flip this over, and I just realized when you do actually clear these quests, you are supposed to do it in order, and I have not been refilling these in order, so I think for the rest of the game, I'll really try to conveyor belt in a clockwise fashion around here, sliding them around. Sorry for getting that wrong earlier. I don't think it's going to have too much of an effect on the game, though. Also at this point, if anybody had lost all of their health and become exhausted, then they would immediately bounce back to their current maximum, and they would actually lose a spell level over here, which is pretty harsh, but they would be in a pretty good situation for going forward, but nobody really did that. In fact, all of us just lost 1 health in that given night phase. That was really not too bad for everybody. So the last thing we need to do is bring back these movement cards, and we're going to flip all of them back to their face upside so that we can start turn 2. Blue now starts us off, and they are going to go on a raft. This is actually the only movement we didn't do before, and this allows a hero to move as far as you want up and down one of these different river canals. They're going to pick up this hero right here, and they're going to travel all the way down until they get to the yellow player's castle. They're going to go ahead and drop their hero off. Again, they go into the courtyard instead of the actual castle area when they do that. And as soon as they do that, they are going to fulfill this quest right here. This is the one that says, if you have all 3 of your heroes in each separate player's castles, then you get to advance 2 spell books in the spell library, which is huge. This does not say that you cannot be in your own castle, so that's why I'm interpreting it this way. So they have 1, 2, 3 people in 3 different castles. They're going to go ahead and grab this one. So we'll go ahead and tuck it under here, and we assume that when they studied with the foreign wizards, they did it well. I suppose thematically maybe they should have been in the other players' castles. It's hard to tell which way we're going to go, but I'll interpret it this way for the purpose of the video. And now they get those 2 spellbooks, which bounces them all the way up to here, so they now actually have a power threshold of 5. We can flip this first player token over and draw a new quest, and let's see, this is, oh, it's another treasure map. This one is for the book that you can grab. Well, that's interesting. I think this one makes it easier for you to learn new spells. And this says that if you have 2 heroes learning spells at the same time, then you could go ahead and get this treasure map. Oops, I just realized I forgot to flip over these preparation cards. Yellow decides they don't really like their options for going rafting, so instead they are going to go idle. And since they have at least 1 hero in a castle, they can get 1 health and 1 power. That's going to get them to 6 health and 3 power. Now, we could use the raft, and I think we really like the idea of trying to go after grabbing this book. What it does is it allows a hero, when they're trying to do a spell, to evaluate the magic track as if it was +1 when it comes to the magic. So they essentially would already get the 1 when they were in the 0 mode, and they would be at 2 when they were just in the 1 area. So that's a really powerful item. I think we want to try to get it. We might be able to grab it in this night round if we get a little bit lucky, and if the day round goes the way we want to. So in order to do that, we have to have 2 people both studying magic. So let's go ahead and take this person right here and move it up once to go to this spot, which is the spider spell. And if we look over here, that's just 2 ahead of us, which is not outside the realm of possibility for us to be able to get up to over here, or I guess stay in the night phase until it got all the way over here. That'd be really nice, but we're mostly doing this just so we have a hero who is learning a spell, so we can try to grab that. Now that we've all done rafting, we can flip this over, and it now goes to the yellow player to choose one of these, and they've decided they want to activate by horse. They're going to grab this hero, and they're going to move them all the way over to the other side. They're going to jump into the water temple over here, and when they do that, they announce that they are seeking to find their legendary staff. Once again, if they get all the way to the end, they will be able to actually find that staff and equip it onto one of their heroes. So it's our turn to go by horse, and I think let's follow through with that plan we had. So let's zoom over here and go to this library where we could be learning the bird spell, which is the second to highest on the track, but that doesn't matter. We now have 2 people that are in spell locations, so we now get to grab this quest because we satisfied the top, and we now really want to get to, let's see here, that is the desert temple, where we might find the tome, which is going to make us really good at learning new magic. So of course we reveal the next spell, and this one says, light the cursed beacons. So in order to do this, you have to have all 3 of your heroes on shores, but none of them are on your castle, and you get 2 health and 2 power. So relatively simple, kind of a cool thematic tie-in with all you people around the outside of this world trying to light those towers. Blue now has this hero jump on a horse and ride all the way over here and also go into the green player's castle, and the reason they're doing that is because they are about to complete a quest. We see here that they have now attended an ally's coronation. They just needed to have 2 heroes in another player's castle, and they now get to move any one of their heroes to one space in any direction. So the biggest reason they did this is to have more quests to get more points at the end of the game. For the effect of that quest, they're going to go ahead and grab one of these heroes and move them down right over here to the forest temple, and once they get in here, they announce they are attempting to find the bow. So let's go ahead and slide our quests around and reveal the next one. This one says, you can deliver the royal decree. In order to do this, you have to have all 3 of your heroes at least 3 spaces away from your castle, and you count this orthogonally, and that also gives 2 health and 2 power. So that reward is a bit of a general one. It seems like multiple quests have that, but gaining a couple health and a couple power is really important, especially after a potentially brutal night phase where you might not have that much health or power left. Now that we've all finished our horse movements, we can flip this over, and it goes to us to figure out if we want to go by foot, by ship, or by Griffin. And unfortunately, what we really would like to do is get a person into the desert temple trying to find the book, and get a person into the ice temple trying to find that legendary sword. But I just don't see a way of actually making that happen with the current setup here, because we are going to do a movement action, and then the blue player will do one more. And if they take this ship action, then there will be no way to get to either of these, because neither of these temples are on a shore. So I think we need to kind of assume that we won't be able to do that, especially considering blue right now has, let's see, 2 people on shores that are not doing anything for them. So it's very likely they will pick this, especially if they happen to notice that it would really mess us over. So I think what we should actually do is move this person right here, and I think let's move him into the Ice Temple. The reason for that is because this one is trying to study the Yellow Bird Tome, which we are nowhere near getting to. It's like literally impossible to actually study that far, whereas this person is on the Spider Tome, which is unlikely to happen. We need to get the magic token all the way over to here, but it is possible. So let's go ahead and activate by foot, and we're just going to move straight over into the Ice Temple and announce that we're trying to find our legendary sword. I think that's more important than trying to find the tome. The tome is nice for just increasing our spell damage, but getting that sword would make one of our people way better at killing goblins, and getting goblins killed is going to help us have more health, and it just seems like a really good idea, and it's going to get us points. Plus, that sword looks really cool, so let's go ahead and shoot for that. Blue decides to have this hero travel by foot over to this area here, and as I mentioned before, when you pass through a map tile that has an aggressive goblin, you need to spend a power, but when you land on a tile that has an aggressive goblin, you actually flip it over. But I believe the interpretation is that you only when you go into this pit do you flip it over. Since they're going to go over here to the Mushroom Grotto, and they're not flipping this over, I think they still probably do have to spend that 1 power. I'm not 100% sure on this, but that's the way I'm going to play it. So they go down to 2. And then they activate this ability which lets them move one hero once in a temple, so they'll move this person over. And now yellow travels by foot to send this hero into this ice temple once again. And it's important to note you can have a maximum of 2 different heroes in a temple at any point in time. So this temple is now maxed out. And of course, when they arrive, they announce that they are trying to find the flute. Now that we've all traveled by foot, it's going to go over to the blue player to pick the final movement type. And in fact, they are going to choose by ship. So we definitely played correctly in assuming that they were probably going to do that. The Griffin is a little bit more restrictive being a diagonal setting. So now they get to move by ship. And they're not actually going to move very far. They're just going to drop down here into this mushroom grotto. But they are going to have to pay 1 more power because there is this aggressive side goblin in this area they're passing through. And this brings them down to 1. However, it also means that they have completed another quest. This is the Deliver Royal Decrees, because all 3 of their heroes are at least 3 spaces away from their home castle. We have 1, 2, 3. We have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 away. So this means they're going to get the quest. Also, they're going to gain 2 health and 2 power. So they go up to their maximum health of 7 because of the killed goblin, and then these 2 power brings them up to 3. Let's now reveal another quest from the top of the deck. This one says, Guard the King's Road, and it says you have all 3 of your heroes in a horizontal line, each on a separate space, but none of them can be on their castle, and that just gives straight 3 power, so pretty cool quest right there. And now blue can evaluate this hero who is in this mushroom grotto, and this one says they can roll the dice and use any torches or maps to advance any of their heroes in temples. So they're going to go ahead and roll the 5 dice, and let's see here, they got 2 maps and a torch. And right now blue's only in 1 temple and it requires these torches, so they get to move ahead once. Now yellow gets to move by boat, and actually they're going to do the exact same thing. All of us can jump in on these mushroom grottos here, and the yellow player is actually in 2 different temples. So they're happy with either torches or maps, and they get, alright, just 2 maps. That's still pretty darn good for them. I'm sure they would have liked to have more, but I think 2 out of the 5 is going to work well, so they'll move twice along this track. Not bad for not even being in the night phase yet. And finally, we get to take a movement, and I figure let's just jump over here and maybe try to attack this goblin again. We didn't do a very good job last night phase, but having goblins really would be good. We want to have at least 1 so we don't get those negative points at the end of the game, and just having a higher health threshold is also good, even though right now we're only at 5. So when we go here, we flip this over, we show that they are at full health, and with that, we are now done with day phase. Night starts with the blue player. They're definitely going to roll the dice. And let's see, we have 1 goblin and 2 power. There's going to be 1 magic and a single map symbol. So the goblin is just going to do 1 damage to the blue player. They have 3 power, so they're going to go ahead and spend 2 of that power to mitigate that 1 damage. And now these 2 power symbols are going to give 1 to the blue player and then 1 to the yellow player. And yellow is now at their maximum of 4 power because, again, they have 1 spellbook. The spell die pushes the token up once. And nobody can make use of this map because the yellow player needs 2 maps to progress forward, and everybody else just needs torches. So with that, it goes over to the yellow player, and they roll the dice to see what they get. Looks like 1 goblin, 1 power, and then a couple of these magic symbols. Yellow is going to spend 2 power in order to mitigate the damage of this 1 goblin here, and then they're immediately going to take 1 power back. And now we have 2 of these magic dice, which pushes this track up twice, and this is starting to look kind of good for us. Again, we want this to get all the way over to this zone before we rest, and so far we haven't even taken any damage yet, so not a bad start to the night phase for us. Lastly, everybody gets to use this torch right here. Unfortunately for blue, they need 2 torches to move forward, but both red and yellow, we get to move forward once in the ice temple. So it's now our turn to roll the dice. I think we're definitely going to stick around. We really want to get lots of those mushrooms, and, well, no mushrooms and only 1 fist. That's a bit unfortunate. We are going to take 1 damage, and we have only 1 power, so we can't even mitigate it. So we're going to go down to 4 life, but there is this 1 power token here. So we'll go back to 2, which means we can mitigate 1 more damage coming in at us later on in this night phase. And now we can evaluate these all at the same time, although I think we're the only ones attacking goblins. And again, 1 fist is just not going to be good enough. However, with these 2 torches, we are, the red player and the yellow player, we're going to get to move forward once. And the blue player does get to move forward once as well because they just need those 2 torches. So that evaluates these dice, and now we go to the blue player who's definitely sticking it out. And we see, 2 goblins, a couple more torches, and another single fist. That's a bummer. But first of all, these 2 goblins, that's 2 damage. The blue player is going to spend both of their power, essentially depleting their power in order to mitigate that. And actually, now that I think about it, or now that Blue thinks about it, they're just going to take the 1 damage. They're kind of low on power. They could definitely use more, and it's potential to be used in other ways throughout the game. So they have all this life. They may as well deplete 1 down. The yellow player, they figure they will do the same thing, and it goes over to us. And I think we are at, nope, we don't actually need to take any damage. That was only 2 goblins. So this is irrelevant, and we once again have these 2 torches, which is great for everybody. That means that Blue gets to move up to here. They are going to successfully get that bow, and then both yellow and red, we move in here. We are really close to getting our legendary sword, and yellow's close to that flute. So the dice are picked up and collected by the yellow player. In fact, I think I'm going to roll this little cube for the yellow player, and then I also have blue and red ones, because due to the way I'm filming, it's getting a little hard to remember who's actually rolling the dice. So the yellow player rolls these, and we see they have, ooh, that's great for us, a couple of fists finally. There's one of these goblins, so that is going to hit the yellow player, and I think, let's see, there is no power on these spots here. I think they are still just going to take the 2 power down in order to defend that 1 attack. And then there is no magic, and there's also no power here, so the rest of these things happen simultaneously. We can go ahead and do 1 damage to that goblin with these 2 fists here, which is pretty darn great. But unfortunately for everybody, a single map and a single torch doesn't really do anything. So with that, they will collect the dice, and this is now going to come over to us. And let's see, I think we probably still want to stay in. We would love to see more of those mushrooms to potentially get that spell upgrade. Also, it would be really great to get that legendary sword for the next turn. So we'll roll the dice, and oh no. Oh no, that is not looking amazing for really anybody at this point. That is going to be 3 damage from the goblins. I guess we only take 1 damage. Let's go ahead and use both of our power to mitigate that. The blue player, they're just going to take a damage, and the yellow player is going to take a damage. I keep forgetting that you see 3 goblins. That looks terrible, but actually it only hit us for 1 damage. So it's almost a good thing to have multiples like this. You can kind of hit your opponents. And now there is 1 power, so we can get 1 power back. And this 1 map is not going to do anything for anybody. So the dice now go to the blue player, but they have decided they are done with this night phase. They were able to complete this temple. They really don't have anything else they're waiting for, so they're going to flip over to the resting side. They are going to have to bring this person back to their castle, but when they do that, they are going to come with a bow. This means they have completed this quest, and they can grab this little bow token here and snap it into one of their heroes. You can see a variety of other stuff that we could potentially try to equip our people with as we play the game. Blue can equip this bow onto any of their heroes, but once it's equipped, they can never move it again. They've decided that this hero right here can go ahead and get it, and this just kind of snaps into their little hand slot, so they now have this bow and arrow for the rest of the game, and they've decided to leave this hero in this mushroom grotto, and they're going to leave the other one in that mushroom grotto as well. So the dice now go back to the yellow player, and they are definitely going to roll them. Ooh, that's interesting. There's only 1 of these magic. There is quite a bit of power to be had over here. I guess ultimately it's not that interesting. It doesn't really hurt any of us. So with 3 power to give out, the yellow player is going to get 1. Then we are going to get 1. Blue is resting, so they don't get anything. And yellow is going to get 1 more power. This die will put the magic track up 1 more time. We really want to see 3 more of those mushrooms before we have to stop. And yellow is the only one who cares about maps, but they need 2 maps in order to do anything, so they are now done rolling, and it goes over to us. I think even though we are getting a little low on our resources, let's go ahead and see what we get. This is really not too bad. With 2 goblins, that is going to do 1 damage to us, and I think let's go ahead and spend the 2 power to not take the damage at this point. And then the other damage goes over to the yellow player, and they have decided they are also, I think, going to spend the 2 power in order to mitigate that. And now this 1 torch does not do anything for either of us, but these 2 fists are great. That means that we can do 1 more damage to this goblin, and that means we just need 1 more fist in this night round to actually kill that goblin. So we are not only trying to stick around to try and get our legendary sword, but also to kill this goblin and get a spell. We have all sorts of things that we want to do, but with that, we are done rolling, and it goes back to the yellow player. Yellow decides they still want to stick it out. They're going to roll the dice, and let's see. Ooh, there's a magic. That's definitely good. And there is 1 of these goblins. So that is going to do 1 damage to the yellow player because they, I believe, don't have any power. I think I knocked that off intentionally. And then, ooh, here we go. There are 2 of these torches. Although before I get ahead of myself, let's do this magic. This puts us so close to being able to learn that spell. In fact, this was just a great roll for us to have happen. This 1 fist means that we can slide this over. We do that last damage to this goblin, so we get to take it into our area. And then these 2 torches means that both yellow and red, we both complete this temple right here. We now have a maximum health of 7. And with that, yellow is done rolling. And I think Even though we've got a legendary sword now, we've killed our goblin, we are just one mushroom away from being able to learn those spells too. So let's keep pushing our luck, stick it out, and hope for just one mushroom. All right, we got it. So we are going to take a damage, so we're starting to get really low on those resources, but with these 2 power, we will generate 1, and then 1 goes over to the yellow player. This magic mushroom is going to push up the track, and the marker now goes into the 2 range. And neither of us care about this torch, so it goes back to the yellow player, and they've decided they are going to rest. They could stick around to try and get some more of these maps to push this person up farther on the track, but they're really not that close, and the yellow player is starting to run quite low on all of their resources, both health and power, so they are going to rest, and when they do that, this person who is in this temple is going to go back to their castle. They are going to leave that person in the water temple for now, and I think they're probably going to leave this person in this mushroom grotto as well. Completing the ice temple allows the yellow player to grab the flute item, and we see down at the bottom, this is going to allow whichever hero has it to always use the Griffin movement instead of the current normal movement if they want. And yellow decides they are going to put this item onto this little guy down here. I guess just lots of items in this one particular mushroom grotto. So the dice now come back to me, and I think that we also want to rest. We were able to do everything we wanted to in this given round. We killed a goblin, we got a legendary sword, and we were able to go up twice on our spell levels. This means that all 3 of our heroes must go back to the castle. We can learn all the way to the spider tome because once again, that was a leap of 2, and we got to the 2 section on the push your luck track. And completing the Ice Temple means that we have now unlocked this legendary sword. And once again, this allows that particular hero to spend power so that they can get an extra fist. So it's going to be much easier to get to the 2 fists required to do the first couple damage on those goblins. It doesn't really matter which hero we put this on because they all had to go back to the starting castle, so we get to snap this gigantic sword into play. I don't think we're going to be able to forget which one's going to be doing most of the goblin killing. And with that, the night phase is over, so we reset the magic track. This goblin over here becomes aggressive, and we reveal a new goblin on the passive side over into this portal. We now pass the starting player marker over to the yellow player, and we flip it back to its exclamation point side. And we can move into turn 3. It occurs to me we haven't actually been keeping track of it. This is a scoring tracker from when the game was slightly different, so instead of going 1-to-1, we, for the first turn we were here, for the second turn we were at the 6, and now we're going over to the 12, essentially going up in 6 increments until we get all the way to 30, which will be 5 total turns for the game. It's also worth noting that the game can end early if any player is able to get all the way to the end of the spell track, or if every single goblin has been put out onto the board and killed. So we're going to move right back on into the day phase. We'll flip all of these cards over, and it's going to be the yellow player who gets to choose one of these movement cards first. They've decided they are going to begin by going by ship. They're going to ship this hero all the way around the coast to this mushroom grotto over here. Since they pass through a region with an aggressive goblin, that is going to cost them 1 power. However, it's also going to allow them to advance one of their heroes on 1 temple room. So they lose their last power, but this puts their hero 1 room away from being able to get their legendary staff during the night phase. Perhaps more importantly, this also means they have completed this quest, which is Light the Cursed Beacons, because they have all 3 of their heroes on coastal regions that are not their castle. That is going to get them 2 health and 2 power back, as well as just getting them a quest. This is only their second quest of the game, and right now the blue player already has 4, so they definitely feel like they have to catch up. So they go ahead and slide this underneath. They get 2 health and 2 power. They can flip the starting player token over because somebody took a quest. And now we slide these quests around and see a new one. This says a treasure map to the key. Oh, this is cool. It says you have to move 1 hero, completing a 2x2 square of spaces that each has a hero. They can be from any player, and they cannot have one in their castle. And what this key does is whenever that player or that hero goes into a temple, they just start 1 room in, which is kind of nice. We now get to do a ship action, and I think let's go ahead and take this crazy Slayer guy with our legendary sword. We're going to travel all the way around to here. We're going to plunk down in the goblin fighting pit. We'll flip this over, and we are definitely going to try and kill him on this round. The blue player is going to take their hero with the bow and arrow. They're going to sail them all the way around the coast until they plunk down into this spell library. I'm not really sure what this symbol is. Perhaps it's some sort of hand or hoof, or maybe even like a flying egg. I'm not really sure, but that is 2 spell ticks away from where they currently are at, so they're hoping to push their luck there. Also, since this is the hero with the bow and arrow, they can actually shoot at adjacent goblins as long as nobody else is fighting those goblins while they are learning this spell. Now, the bow and arrow does not work when the player is in their castle or in a temple, but while they are learning things, they can definitely be shooting at goblins, so a pretty good synergy of actions that they're trying to do. With that, we are all done sailing, so now it's going to go to us. We can figure out what we want to do. Let's go ahead and hitch a ride by Griffin. We're going to take one of our heroes and we're going to move diagonally over to this area. Now, it is going to cost us 1 power because we're not going to be attacking these goblins. We're going to go into this mushroom grotto. And this actually costs us our last power, but don't worry, we're about to get a bunch more. We can now look to the text of this mushroom and we see it says, gain 2 power for each hero outside of your castle. Well, we still have 1 in our castle, but we have 2 outside, so that gains us 4 power. I thought about trying to stall out until we got this last person out of the castle, but there was no way to guarantee that the movement cards would allow us to actually get over here and activate it, and I'd much rather be at 4 power than 1. I'd take the guarantee. So we go ahead and grab 4 power. And this power is going to be really great to have when we consider the fact that we have somebody fighting goblins with this legendary sword. Blue now uses the Griffin movability to go diagonally over here. They are going to enter the water temple and announce they are trying to find the first step for their legendary sword. And yellow will now take this hero who incidentally actually has a flute, so they can always take a Griffin movement, but they're going to do the regular Griffin movement to go here, and then over here they are going to try to learn the spider level spell, which is 2 above where they currently are at. We're all done flying by Griffin, so now it is the blue player who gets to decide what we do from these 3. They decide they want to travel by horse, and they ride this hero just 1 tile over into the forest temple where they announce they are looking for the first step for their magic staff. Now yellow will ride this hero on the same road, but they're going to go a little bit farther, and they are actually going to jump into this goblin fighting ring, flipping this over to the passive sign so that they can start fighting it. And we are going to travel down the same road actually, and we're really happy with how this worked out. We can jump over here and enter the desert temple because we are still trying to find that tome, which would make it better for us to study those spells. So we'll jump in there. And now yellow gets to pick out of the last 2 movements which one is best for them. And they've decided to pick by raft, even though they are actually going to be idling themselves. They like the position for all of their people currently on the map, and unfortunately none of them are even in a castle, so they don't get a bonus for it. They're a little unhappy that that was the best thing they thought they could do, but that is the way it turned out. Considering we have to move straight up and we don't want to stop fighting this goblin or stop finding the tome in the desert temple, we are going to move this person, and we're just going to go up twice, and we're going to go down into this same spell library as our blue opponent. That is just 1 tick up for us, but it'd still be nice to keep pushing farther and farther up on that track. Once again, we have this table here to show that the more of those spells we get, the more victory points we get. So, you know, it's just a good thing to work towards. Plus, just having more max power is always a good thing, even though we're not currently at our maximum. Blue can now travel by raft, but they too don't really want to move anybody, so they go idle, and they also don't have anybody in a castle, so they're not going to get any benefits for that, and we can now shift into the night phase. Yellow will be starting this off, and I'm pretty sure they were at 5 health. I probably shouldn't be splashing so much. Let's see, there are no goblins, and there is 1 power, so that's going to go to the yellow player, and then everything else is actually just a simultaneous activation. With these 2 torches, the blue player moves twice in the forest temple, and with this 1 map, we move once in the desert temple, and blue gets to move once in the water temple. This 1 fist is normally not enough to damage this goblin. However, we have 4 power at our disposal, so we are going to spend 1 of that power right now in order to get another fist, so we do the first level of damage to the goblin with this guy with the gigantic sword. With that, yellow is done. It goes over to us, and I think we definitely want to stick around. We want to kill that goblin for sure. And ooh, nice. We're not rolling any goblins, so we're not taking any damage at this point. In fact, we have a couple power here, so we're going to get 1 power, bringing us back to 4. That's nice. We just spent it. And the blue player is also going to get the other power. Looking at the torch situation, that really helps the blue player. They're the only one who need torches, and they will move 1 more step along the path. And with 1 map, I suppose once again the yellow player is the only sad one because blue gets to move up once, and we also get to move up once. I think yellow figured they had a really good shot of just getting 2 maps at some point, but so far it's not quite panned out for them. The dice now go to the blue player, and they are going to stick around. Alright, it looks like the goblins have finally shown up, so that's going to be 1 damage to the blue player, and I think they're just going to go ahead and, yeah, they'll actually lose the power, I think, for the moment. And then 1 damage goes over to the yellow player, and they're just going to lose the health. These 2 magic dice move the marker up twice. And once again, we've turned the misfortune of only seeing 1 attack die into awesomeness, because we're going to spend 1 of our power, bringing us back down to 3, because we just generated 1 on the previous round. And that'll be 2 more damage, which ticks the goblin over 1 more time. The dice now go to the yellow player, and they are going to stick around. They just want to see 2 maps. Well, that was unfortunate. They didn't get any maps. But there are 2 of these goblins, so that's going to do 1 damage to the yellow player, and I think they are just going to take the damage at this point, and that's 1 damage over to us. And I think, let's go ahead. We really like having power around, although that doesn't actually matter anymore because with this one die, we are actually going to be able to kill this goblin. So let's just go ahead and, no, let's just keep the power. Power's really good for us. We'll take 1 damage, bringing us down to just 2 life. There are ways we can get more life through quests. There's also a mushroom grotto on the board that'll give us a pretty good amount of health if we choose to go over there. So with that, these are done. Now we have to move up the magic track by 1. Since we are hunting for the 4th level tome, we just need to get into this zone before we rest, so we're pretty happy with how fast that marker's moving. This single attack die means that we have killed this goblin. Wow, it's pretty easy to kill goblins when you have legendary swords. And this means our maximum health is now 8. We should probably get some of that health back so we can make use of the fact that our threshold's so high. This torch is no help to anybody because the blue player needs 2 of them, so with that, the dice come over to us, and we're going to stick around. We want to see 1 more mushroom, and we would also love to get a couple more of these maps to potentially get farther along in that dungeon. And alright, we got the mushroom, and actually there are no goblins. That's really good for us considering we are at 2 life. So, first things first, there are 2 of these power, so we're going to gain 1 power, and blue also gets a power. Now there is this 1 magic die. And that pushes it into the zone for us to be able to learn that spell, so we're probably going to be getting out sooner rather than later. And once again, a single fist and a single torch are not going to help anybody. So we are now done with the dice. We're going to pass them over to the blue player, and blue is going to indeed stick around for probably a good while longer. Well, on the one hand, there were no goblins. On the other hand, man, they are just not getting 2 of these in a row. That really helped us having that sword. That's an understatement, actually. So to start, the blue player is going to get 1 power. There are no mushrooms. This 1 fist is not going to do anything. This 1 torch isn't going to do anything, but these 2 maps are pretty darn great. We're going to get to go forward once. Yellow is going to get to move forward once. They actually get to the end of this track, and blue also moves forward. They're right behind. With that, yellow takes the dice, and they want to stick around a little bit longer. This 1 goblin is going to do 1 damage to them, and I think they're going to continue to prioritize their power. They're going to take the damage going down to 2. They are going to gain 1 power, which is pretty nice for them, and this 1 magic die pushes up the marker. Both the blue and yellow players are trying to learn a spell that is 2 ahead, so they're probably sticking around to try to get into this section while we are already happy with the spot where this marker is. The dice are now passed over to me, and I think let's go ahead and stick around. We're just 2 maps shy of being able to put this person in here, and it's kind of a bummer when you have to leave a person in a temple for the next day phase. Of course, you could pull them out if you want to, but it'd be really great to have access to that item sooner rather than later. We are a little low on things, but at this moment, there's no way for us to take 2 damage in 1 shot. So we're going to roll the dice, and ooh, we're not going to take any damage. That's certainly good, although we did not roll any maps, which is not quite as great. I should also probably clarify that just because we could only take 1 damage in this turn does not mean that we could not lose out and become exhausted by the time we have a chance to go again, because we decided to roll the dice, which means we are adventuring, and we can only rest when we get the dice again. So if we had taken a damage and then received another damage from one of these players when they rolled, we could have been in some serious trouble, although with this power that is a reasonable amount of mitigation. So it's one thing to think about as you keep getting lower, how much damage you might take on your turn as well as all the other players around the table. So there is 1 power here. We get to take another one because right now our max power is actually 6 because we have 3 of those spell tomes. And speaking of the magic track, we're going to push it up once. It's now just 1 away from where blue and yellow want it. And yet again, all 3 of these dice are not going to do anything for any of the players. So the dice are now passed over to the blue player, and yeah, they're definitely going to stick around. They want to see 1 more mushroom, and they're super close to being able to get this water temple done. So they're going to roll the dice. I said I was going to stop splashing the yellow player's board, and I have not been keeping true to my promise. I'm pretty sure they were at 3 health and, let's see, 4 power. Actually, they are at 2 life, my bad. This 1 power is going to allow blue to go up to 4. These 2 mushrooms push the indicator up twice. It's definitely now getting pretty scary. These goblins are going to start doing 2 damage each, and nobody can generate power anymore. And once again, despite all that die rolling, just cannot seem to get 2 of these attack symbols together. It's not a problem for us because of that sword, but the other players are definitely hurting for it. And this single map has been poking up a few times, but with that, we are done evaluating these dice. So it is now the yellow player's turn to roll the dice, and they want to think about it. And it turns out they didn't actually have to think very much. They are certainly going to be resting. They only have 2 health left over at this point. They got to the end of this track over here. They are going to be able to learn their spell. The only thing they didn't really do was do any damage to this goblin, and there's no reason to stick around to try and do that now, especially with the spell power track being so high. So they are going to rest. This hero is going to come back to their castle. as are their other two heroes. When they do that, they've now unlocked their legendary staff. They are going to get to put this onto one of their heroes, and the ability, it's kind of similar to the sword. In this case, they can spend power in order to increase the current amount of the magic track for just themselves. So it's not going to help anybody else. It's going to make it much easier for them to learn much harder spells earlier without having to go so long into the night round. Since this flute on the hero allows them to move diagonally instead of the currently chosen movement, they've decided they're going to put this legendary staff with the same hero. They're kind of like consolidating all of their awesome stuff. And the reason for that is because this staff means that this hero is really good at learning magic. So they want to be able to get this hero to the correct magic spot, and the way to do that is to do it with the person who has the most movement flexibility. And they get to move their marker up twice because they were studying at the Spider Library, and they were able to get to the 2 level before they rested. This means the dice now come to me, and I am certainly going to be resting. I've been able to do pretty much everything I wanted to. It would have been nice to get those extra 2 maps to cash in on this temple, but it's not the end of the world. We were able to learn some more magic, and we were also able to kill that goblin. So we were able to do some pretty cool stuff. We were able to more than get to the next spell level we wanted to be at. This is the library we were studying at. We only needed to be here, but we stuck around longer than necessary, I suppose. We now bring our legendary fighter, as well as this, I don't know, uninteresting hero, back to the castle. And this person way over here, they're still going to stick around. We are really hoping they can cash in and get that tome on the next turn. So the dice come back to the blue player, and even though things are getting a little scary, they are going to stick it out because they are just 2 torches away from finishing this temple, and they are 2 maps away from finishing this temple. They really want to get at least one of those before they stop. So they are going to roll the dice. Dang, that was really not a good roll. They are going to take 2 damage, and even though there are these 3 power here, that is not going to do anything for them because power dice no longer do anything. So they are going to take 2 damage. I think they'll spend 2 power to do the first one, and then they'll actually take the second damage, and it's going to come right back to them. They're not able to do anything with this attack die, so they are going to keep rolling. They really want to see it, and oh no. Well, this doesn't hurt them just yet, but things are getting a lot scarier. First of all, they don't take any power, and then we move the track up 3 times. We see that the track can only move up 1 more time, and now every single goblin is going to do 3 damage, and every one of the power symbols are actually going to do 1 damage as well. This is a very scary place to hang out. But blue decides they are going to give it 1 more shot. Phew, this is not great for them, but it could be worse. First of all, they're going to take 3 damage from these goblins. Well, they're going to spend 2 power immediately to mitigate one of those, and then they will take 2 damage. And lastly, this 1 power is going to do 1 damage to them. So they are just hanging by a thread. This magic mushroom is not going to do anything for them, but they did indeed stick out long enough so that they could get these 2 maps. And this allows them to move into the final chamber over here, and they are definitely not going to roll those dice again. There's just pretty much no way they don't actually become exhausted if that happened, and that would be really terrible if they became exhausted because, first of all, they would lose one of their spell levels. They would also not learn a spell, and they are currently in the process of trying to learn one, but it would bring them back up to their maximum health and power, so it's not the end of the world, but it's certainly not great. So when they rest, this person is going to zoom back onto their castle. They get to move their legendary sword up 1 level on their player mat. They gain 2 spell levels on the spell track, and this person is going to go back to the castle. They're really sad. They never got to use this bow. They just saw all those single fists, but never a double. The night phase is over, so we reset the magic track. We flip 2 goblins over to their aggressive side, and we put a passive goblin into this portal where we killed one. And we once again become the starting player. Lastly, we move the round counter up to 18 to show that we are now jumping into the 4th out of 5 turns of the game. We switch back into day mode where we are going to refresh all of these movement cards, and we actually get to pick first. We are only at 2 health, and there is a mushroom grotto over here that gains you 2 health per hero that is not in a castle, and our current max is 8. So it would be really great to get 6 health by entering this mushroom grotto, but it's kind of far away from us. The other thing about this spot is that that is the farthest possible place away from us, and there is this quest to get this boomerang where you'd have to take a ship back from the farthest possible place. I don't know if it's realistic to think that we'd be able to get this and cash it in before the end of the game, but it's something worth thinking about. So I think what we want to do is actually move one of our players so that we can get over there at some point on their turn. Obviously not right now. We want to set up one of our people so that we can jump in when we have nobody in our castle. Let's go ahead and start by activating the Griffin, and we're going to take our non-sword wielding hero and we're going to move over to the blue player's area, and I figure we may as well end up in their castle. There's no penalty for being in an opponent's castle, and if for some reason we want to idle ourselves, well, at least we'll get a health and a power. Blue is going to move their archer over to this spot here into the library where they can learn the fish spell, which is 2 ticks up on the spell track for them. Yellow decides to go idle. They don't really like their diagonal options at this moment, so they are in a castle. They will generate 1 power and 1 health. With that, we're all done doing the Griffin, and it goes over to the blue player, and they decide they want to activate Buy Horse. And they're actually going to be idling. They're going to move up 1 health and 1 power, and the reason for this is when you're at 0 power, there are a variety of spots you cannot even go to on the board without actually attacking those goblins, and if they don't want to be attacking those goblins, well, they're really restricted. So now that they have a power, they could potentially move through a goblin space going forward for the rest of their turn. Yellow is going to have their traveling wizard guy move in a diagonal formation over here. I guess, once again, this flute does not actually help them out just yet. I mean, it's nice to have options, but even as it is, they want to get over here into the dolphin library because that is 3 ticks away. And because they have the staff, they have the ability to be able to get to that 3rd tick much faster. So they're trying to jump really far ahead on the spell track by moving over there. And that works out great for us because we get to move once over to this spot. We're going to activate this Mushroom Grotto. And we see this is the one that gets us 2 health for each hero that's outside of our castle. And right now, all 3 of our heroes are outside. However, we are going to lose 1 strength when we go into the spot because of this aggressive goblin right here. So we go down to 4 power, and then we were at 2 health, so we jump all the way up to our maximum of 8. We can definitely stick around a long time in the night phase now. And when we moved into this spot, we have now completed a 2x2 grid full of different people's heroes, which means we are going to get to take this treasure map right here. This is the one for the Lion Key. So we can now put this into our area, and we're going to need to draw a new one. And we see that this is Join the Bard's Guild. It says have 1 hero in a temple, 1 learning a spell, and 1 fighting a goblin. And that gets 3 health or 3 power. Alright, we've all now traveled by foot, so now the yellow player gets to decide which one they want to pick, and they want to travel by raft. They're going to take this hero right here and move up to the desert temple, and when they enter the temple, they are saying they are going to be looking for the first phase for their legendary sword. Let's go ahead and hitch a raft down to the water temple, and once we enter here, we announce we are going to be trying to find the key. Blue doesn't really like their options, so they're actually going to idle 1 more time because they're still in a castle. With that, we're all done with the raft, and it comes finally back to us. And I think, let's go ahead and sail by ship. And you know what? I'm sick of just beating up on this goblin right here. Let's go ahead and sail all the way around to this part of the board. There's no particular reason to, but I figured why not? Let's just go kill that guy. Blue decides to set sail with this hero. They're going to head all the way down to the Shadow Temple. And once there, they announce they are going to try to get to the 2nd level of their legendary sword. And yellow's simply going to sail over to this spot here and attack these goblins. That's going to flip them up to their passive side. And what that means is that the yellow player now has completed a quest. This is the joining the Bard's Guild. They have to be in 1 temple. They have to be in 1 library. And then finally, they have to be fighting 1 goblin. That's going to give them a quest and 3 health or 3 power. And they have decided they are going to grab the 3 health, going from 3 all the way back to 6. With that, we are done with the day phase, and we can now go into the night. It's going to be the red player. That's us. We are the first ones to roll the dice. And at this point, I need to mention an omission. As we've been playing the game, I've been playing it so that you can spend these 2 power in order to mitigate 1 attack from the goblins. What I completely forgot was that you can also spend 2 power in order to gain a map or a torch. And there were many times, I think, where players would probably have spent their power in order to actually do that. Would have made some of the temple quests a little faster for some of the heroes out on the board. So I apologize for that omission, and I'm going to play it correctly going forward. So we are going to begin by rolling the dice. 2 goblins means 2 damage. We are going to freely take that 1 damage. That's totally fine by us. But the blue player, whew, that's not a great start for them. They figure they're just going to go ahead and spend the 2 power in order to mitigate that damage first. And with that, we're done with there. Now there is 1 of these power dice, so we get a power, which is really nice. We go up to 5. And there is also a magic mushroom, which pushes the magic track up once. This single map is going to help a couple people. We get to go up once there, the yellow player gets to go up one map there, and like I just mentioned, we can actually spend 2 of our power right now if we wanted to in order to gain the second map to move this person over here, but I think we're going to be sticking around a little while. Let's try to push our luck, see if we can get 2 naturally, or just spend that 1 power, or the 2 power, sorry, to gain the extra map in order to complete this temple a little bit later on in the turn. It's now the blue player's turn to roll, and even though they are pretty low on stuff, they were not able to refill very well during the day phase of this turn. They are still going to push their luck by rolling the dice, and ooh, okay, well they didn't get any goblins, so that's definitely good for them. There's 1 strength, so that brings them back into 1 strength, so they can kind of claw back in a bit. These 3 mushrooms are going to move the track up 3 times, which pushes it into the 1 spell power zone. And this torch is no help to anybody. The blue player, I think, would gladly spend the 2 power in order to finish this guy off on this track, but they only have 1 power right now, so they're just going to have to stick around. So with that, that's the rest of these dice. It now goes over to the yellow player, who happily rolls all the dice. And that's a pretty good roll. They got this 1 power die, so they gain 1 more power. They were at 5, now they are at 6. Because that is their actual maximum. They start with a base of 3, plus they have 3 of these spell tomes over here, so they're pretty happy with that. Then we are going to push the magic track up by once. I'll just go ahead and do it right now without zooming in. And finally, we have these 3 torches. The blue player is very happy. They're going to move into the final section of the temple track over here, and that is it. It's going to move over to us. We've got lots of health and lots of power, so we certainly want to roll the dice and ooh, oh geez, that is quite a few goblins. So we are going to take a damage, although, yeah, let's just go ahead and take the damage. The blue player is going to take the damage because they don't actually have an option, and then finally the yellow player does have to take a damage. They've decided, yeah, they will take the damage and save their power. Now there is 1 strength on here. That goes to us, so we go all the way up to 6 strength, so we're doing really good when it comes to that. And with this 1 torch, the blue player will be able to go forward once in these rooms, and I just realized I didn't even see this guy down here. They should actually be 1 farther forward. There was 1 extra torch from when the blue player went up these 2 spaces. There were 3 torches there. They would have moved up once, so now they've moved up twice. It's now the blue player's turn to roll the dice, and they want none of it. They are actually going to go ahead and rest. And when they do that, they are going to be pulling this person back over to their castle, and that was on the forest temple track, which means they moved their legendary staff up 1 spot. And unfortunately, this hero with the bow was not able to actually learn the spell. This was 2 spots ahead, and right now the magic track is just on the 1 area, but the blue player just did not feel like it was worth it for them to stick around. They definitely wanted to just cash out before they took even more damage, so this person goes all the way back, and I just realized this goblin should be passive. So it's yellow's turn to roll the die, and I just now realized that I have 2 people in 2 temples with maps. That was not the best planning, but that's kind of the way it panned out for us. We go ahead and roll the dice, and wow, that is a lot of punching we can do. First of all, well, I guess the yellow player is going to get 1 strength, but they don't. It's actually capped out. So it bounces over to us. We can take 1 power because our maximum is 7, and we are now maxed out. I'm not actually sure if I would have been able to take another one or not, if the power needed to go to people, whether or not they were maxed out. But either way, we got 1 power, and that is that for this. And then we have these 3 punches. So what that means is that the yellow player is going to be able to do 1 set of damage to this goblin here. They were 1 more punch away from getting another one. We're going to go ahead and spend 1 power in order to charge up our legendary sword. And that's going to do 4 damage to this goblin, so it ticks over twice. It now comes back over to us, and we are hoping to see maps. We want to see lots of maps. No maps. Oh well, we're going to take 1 damage from the goblin, which we will do. And then with these 2 strength, well, we will go ahead and go back up to our maximum of 7. And the yellow player is still at their max, so the other one does not happen. This 1 magic symbol is going to push up the track, which means it's starting to get a little precarious. This 1 fist means we do 1 damage to this goblin, and we kill it. This guy is just destroying the goblins. And that brings our maximum health up to 9. It's now back to yellow, and they are going to stick around. They're going to go ahead and roll the dice, and ooh, maps. There is 1 goblin, which means the yellow player will lose a life, and they're going to go ahead and do that. There is this 1 magic symbol, so the goblins just got a lot scarier. With these 2 maps, we are able to finally complete this desert temple over here, and let's see, the yellow player, they're going to move forward once, and I think they decided to do that ability that I forgot about until recently, where you can spend 2 power in order to get another map. So with that, they used 1 to move 1 room, and then they'll use this map plus the 2 power in order to go to here. And this brings them down to 4 power. It's now our turn to roll, and I really don't think it actually makes sense to. The only thing we can really work on at this point is, well, this temple track over here, and we are just nowhere near the front of it because we accidentally went into 2 map temples. So I think let's go ahead and rest ourselves. When we do that, we are going to pull this person back to our temple, and also this crazy gladiator goblin killer guy. Completing the Desert Temple means that we now have this tome to play with. The text on the bottom says that when this hero learns a spell, each of the little mushroom levels on the magic track yield a +1. It certainly doesn't make sense to give a book to this crazy sword hero guy, so let's go ahead and give this person a book, and now they have some light reading. It's now Yellow's turn to roll the dice, and they're going to push their luck a little further. Ooh, that's a pretty good roll for them. There are none of the goblins, so they're not going to take any damage. There are 2 of these maps. Yeah, this is actually pretty great. With this one magic dice, we're going to move the track up once. This puts the track very close to the end. The 1 attack die does not do anything for them because they needed 2 in order to do 1 more damage to this goblin, but they got these 2 maps. They don't care about the fact that there's a torch. These 2 maps means that they can move their hero here into the final chamber of the Desert Temple. The last thing they do is spend 1 power in order to activate the ability of their legendary wand down here. Now, if you remember, this person over here was the one who was actually trying to learn the new spells, and they are 1 tick away from getting to the 3 value spot on the magic mat. The wand makes it seem like they were 1 tick farther down on this track, and that means they got to the 3 level. Since they were trying to research this fish book right here, which is 3 away, that means when they rest, which they are going to do right now, they are going to jump all the way up to this spot, which is a really big gain for them. And now that they're resting, they're going to pull some of their heroes back to their castle. Let's see, this one who failed at fighting the goblin is going to go back, and in fact, this goblin is going to become aggressive again. Then this one goes back to their castle, and in fact, yes, all of their people are going back to the castle. Completing the Desert Temple means they can move their legendary sword up 1 space on their board. And now we're done with the night phase. We are going to reset the magic track and then make sure that the other goblins are equally aggressive, and now we have to refill this 1 goblin portal because we killed the goblin that was there. I just realized that I never actually filled in the next quest when the last one was taken, and in fact, this should have been flipped over quite a while ago because I think a couple quests were taken in this turn. So let's go ahead and see what the next one is. It says, ooh, it's another treasure map. It's to find the shovel, I guess maybe it's a magical shovel. We see that in order to get this, they need to, a player needs to have all 3 of their heroes orthogonally adjacent to each other, but none of them can be in a castle. And the shovel lets the hero, whenever they move onto a space, they can roll the dice and gain power for each of the power die rolled. So actually a very powerful item. We can now move the round marker forward to the 24 spot again. We're jumping by 6 to essentially make this long track here a 5-turn tracker. This just shows that we've completed 4 turns. We're going to jump into the 5th and final turn, and it's also worth noting that all the stuff on the side of this card, you can just ignore it. None of that really matters to the game now. So let's shift into the 5th and final day phase of the game. We can refresh all of these movement cards here, and we give the starting player token to the blue player. They're going to start by activating the Griffin movement. And once again, they're going to send their archer over to this fish spell library, trying to get that happening. They weren't able to pull it off last turn, and maybe they'll be able to shoot this goblin. They've been trying kind of all game long. We'll see if they're able to actually do some damage with it. Yellow decides to move their hero diagonally over to this spot. That is going to cost them a power, but they will then generate 2 power because they get 2 for each person not in their castle, and right now that's just 1 person. So they go up to 4. I think what we should do is move our hero who has this tome off of our player mat. And the reason is because we want to come back to the player mat in order to go to this library right here. This is going to be 3 spots away from where we currently are, and this book essentially makes it 2 spots away for us. I think trying to go 4 spots away might be asking a little bit too much for us in this final round of the game. So in order to leave the spot diagonally, we want to go to a spot that's going to give us something nice. If we go over here, we could gain some energy, some power, but we are already pretty much maxed out. So I think instead, let's go over to this spot. It's actually going to cost us a power, but I think that's okay. There's lots of ways to generate it, and this is going to allow us to push one of our people up in a temple. So this hero goes to the 2nd level, and for all I know, spending that 1 power to go into that zone might end up being worth it because it would have cost 2 power in order to get an extra book if we were doing it during the night phase. And spending the power brings us down to 6. We've all performed the Griffin action, so the yellow player now gets to go, and they've decided they want to move by horse. They're going to send their wizard hero over to this spot in order to try and learn the Wolf Tome spell, which is 2 above where they currently are at on the track. When it comes to the horse movement, I think let's just go ahead and take this guy with a huge sword and move over here to attack this goblin. The sword guy has not been doing anything too particularly interesting since he got the sword, just wandering around the countryside smacking down goblins seems to be the right way to play him. And Blue's hero rides a horse all the way over here in order to go to this spot where they are going to gain 2 health for every hero outside of their castle. Right now that is all of their heroes. So they get to add 6, which brings them all the way up to their maximum of 7. With that, we're all done moving by horse. It now comes over to us, and I think let's go ahead and we'll choose by foot. This lets us move our hero with the tome back into our starting area, but instead of going to the castle, we're going to go over here to try and learn I think it's a bear spell actually. Blue decides to move this hero down to this spot to the Scorpion Library. They're way beyond the Scorpion Library, so we're pretty sure they have future plans for this hero. Yellow now moves this hero over to the Forest Temple, and when they arrive, they announce they are going to try to find the second stage to their legendary sword. With that, we are all done traveling by foot, so it goes back to the blue player to choose one of these final 2, and they want to go by raft. They move this hero all the way down to this Mushroom Grotto, although this is going to cost them 1 power due to this aggressive goblin right here. Fortunately, they do have the 1 power to lose. If they didn't have the power, then, as I mentioned before, they would not even have the option of going through that spot. And now the ability down here says that the blue player can roll the adventure dice, and every torch and map they gain, they can actually utilize. I'm starting to lose space over there, so I'm going to roll the dice over here, and oh my goodness! Wow, okay, well, 4 torches, that's pretty good. This means they can actually move this hero twice in the Shadow Temple, and they're really not going to need any torches at all in the night phase. They can't pull them off until the resolution phase at the end of this turn, which will also be the end of the game, but it means they have that legendary sword in the bag for the 3 points that it gives them. With the raft, Yellow decides they are going to travel down here, and they're going to try to kill this goblin again. They have not had much success with it yet, but they have not killed any goblins at this point in the game, and so they really want to avoid the negative points you get if you haven't killed any. And now it comes to us. We could hitch a ride in a raft if we wanted to, but there's really no reason to, so we'll idle. We don't actually gain anything because we're not in any castles, so that ends the day phase. For the last time, let's move into the night phase. It is going to be the blue player who rolls the dice first. The only thing they're really going for at this moment is trying to stick around long enough to learn this spell over there, and they need 2 different steps on the spell tome, so they have to stick around for a while. Let's see, that's a reasonably good start. Actually, that's pretty good for them. There is 1 goblin, so they will lose 1 of their health. Then there is a strength, they will gain it. There is a strength for the yellow player, so they'll grab theirs. And there's a strength for us, and let's see here. Yeah, our max power is 7, so we can go up to that spot. There is a single torch, which nobody cares about, so that finalizes this dice roll. It now goes over to the yellow player, who is definitely interested in sticking around for a while. They would love to finish up this forest track. They want to see lots of torches. Ooh, no torches, but there are 2 of these goblins. Yellow decides they are going to take the damage, and we will also take a damage. Next up, there is the 1 power here, and yellow will take that power. Now we have 1 of these magic dice, which pushes on the track once. 1 map was rolled, and we're the only ones who care about maps right now. We need 2 in order to advance forward, but we have 7 power, so let's go ahead and spend 2 power in order to generate a new map so we can go forward once on that track. And now we are the ones who get to roll the dice, and I think we're definitely going to stick around. This is a pretty great roll. There are no goblins, so we don't take any damage. There's no strength, and there is 1 of these magic dice. So the track goes up once more again. And with this many fists, all of us get to do a damage. We have us over here, we get to do 1 tick of damage. In fact, let's go ahead and spend 1 of our power right now, bringing us down to 4, in order to do 1 more tick of damage, because we had this loose remainder. The yellow player can do 1 over here, but they're not able to do more because they don't have that awesome sword, and the same goes for the blue player, because they have this bow and arrow, they finally get to use it. So they can attack this goblin over here, because nobody is currently attacking that goblin, so this slides over, and they just need 3 more fists in order to grab this guy. With this 1 torch, the yellow player is able to move forward once on the forest track, and now we go to the blue player, who decides they are going to stick around a little bit longer. They still have quite a bit of health remaining. This 1 goblin is going to do 1 damage to them, and let's see, there is no power. That is pretty unfortunate for them, actually, but there is this 1 magic die. Blue's hoping to stick around until it gets to this section right here, so they just want to see 4 more of those magic dice rolled. These two maps are excellent for us. It means we can move forward on this track, and we are now able to complete this water temple once we rest, and we'll be able to grab that key. We'll never get to use the ability on it, but it's still great to have because that means we've completed the quest, and that'll give us more points. This one attack die also means that we can kill this goblin right here. We'll just take it off right now, and unfortunately, the other players both still need 2 of these attack dice in order to do more damage. This is our 4th and final goblin, bringing our max health all the way up to 10. Yellow is now up, and they are going to roll. They want to see torches, and ooh, man, they are still really whiffing when it comes to those. But 3 goblins, well, at least they're hurting themselves and everybody else around the table. So the yellow player, they've decided they are going to spend 2 power in order to block the goblin that's attacking them. We are just going to take the damage, and the blue player is just going to take the damage. There is also this power die, so yellow gains one of those power right back, and then one more magic die, which means we've hit the 1 magic power section. It's now back to us, and we are getting a little low on resources over here. We still have 4 power, but only 3 health left. We certainly are hoping to not see many goblins. Ah, man, 1 goblin. That is pretty much a bummer for us. We are going to take that 1 damage, I think. No, let's go ahead and take the 2 power loss. And then we don't gain any power because we didn't roll any, but with these 2 magic dice, we move the track forward twice, and this is really good for us and blue because we are also hoping to get to this secondary level because the person we have researching has that tome, and they are on this bear spot, so we will be able to move forward 3 because the tome is essentially a +1 when it comes to the regions on this board. We could have tried to push for 4, but at this point, I'm really glad we didn't. Nobody can use these maps at all, so it's going to go to the blue player. There's still 1 of these magic dice off, so they're going to stick around, and oh, they were able to get more than 1, so they're pretty happy. They were also hoping to get some more of these fists so they could potentially kill that goblin over there, but that is not looking like it's going to happen. So with these 2 goblins, the blue player is going to lose 1 health, but so is the yellow player. In fact, the yellow player, yeah, they decided they're going to lose 2 power instead of losing the health. And with these 2 magic dice, we can move up the track. And now not only have we entered the 2 section, we are also precariously close to the 3rd and final area. It's now our turn to roll, and we are not going to. I think we are happy. We killed the goblin, we got to the correct spot on the magic track, and we're also able to finish out this temple. So let's quit while we're ahead. We are going to go ahead and rest ourselves, and then we're going to have to pull, I think, everybody back. Yeah, we're going to bring everybody back to the castle, although the position of people on the map does not matter for endgame victory points. As I just mentioned before, the hero who was researching at the bear library had the tome, which gives them a +1. So they essentially were at 3. So we can go 1, 2, 3, and we're going to end the game on that 7th spot. Pretty good. And we were able to get this key item, which we will never get to use, but it certainly looks cool. Let's go ahead and give it to this hero so that all 3 of our heroes have at least something that they're holding at the end of the game. It's now blue's turn to roll the dice, and just like us, they are done. They are going to go ahead and flip this over to the resting side. They are pretty happy with pretty much everything they were able to do on this one particular night phase. They were researching the fish tome, so they were able to successfully jump these 2 steps because the magic marker is in the 2 zone. This hero got to the end of the Shadow Temple, which means they were able to unlock their legendary sword, and why not? They're going to go ahead and give it to that hero for finding it in that specific temple, and now these 2 people who are both on those spots, like trying to research things and trying to find things in the temple, they go back to the player's castle. It's now the yellow player's turn, and they, just like the rest of us, have decided they are going to rest. They really would like to see some torches to even have a shot at completing this temple over here, but man, it just was not in the cards for this one particular night phase. Yellow was researching this wolf book right here, and since that is 2 away, they are able to easily jump over to that spot. They don't even need to spend any power with their legendary wand in order to make that happen. And they're going to go ahead and pull this hero back to their castle along with this one. They were never able to actually kill any goblins in this game. That's a pretty big bummer. With that, the night phase is over, and the game itself is now over, so let's go ahead and crunch up the points and see who won the game. First, we have the number of spells that were completed by each player. The yellow player had the most at 8, which means they get 17 points. We have 7, which is going to give us 14 points, and blue has 6, which is going to give them 12 points. Next up, we have the number of goblins killed. We were able to kill 4 of them, so that's pretty great. That means we are actually going to get 12 points. The blue player only killed 1, so they are going to get 1 point, and the yellow player, unfortunately, is going to lose 2 points because they were never able to actually kill any of those goblins. Next up, we have the quests. We were able to get 3, as did the yellow player, so with 3, we're going to get 6 points each, and the blue player was able to grab 4, so they're going to grab 8. The last thing that gives victory points are the legendary items, and each of us were able to get one of them. Both us and the blue player were able to get the legendary sword, and the yellow player got the legendary wand, so that's 3 points across the board. And when I added it all up, it was not particularly close. We came in with the victory with 35 points. The blue player only had 19, and the yellow player had 24. I hope you enjoyed this playthrough. I have to admit, it went quite a bit longer than I was expecting, but as a tiny epic game, there are many things going on in this small little box, and I think this playthrough did a pretty good job of showing that. I am somewhat bummed that I completely missed out on that rule where you could spend 2 power in order to get a torch or a map for the first 3 turns out of the game out of 5, and I think that would have modified the way the game went to a certain degree because I think less items were grabbed by the players and put onto those heroes because some of those heroes were stalled out in temples when they really shouldn't have been because the die rolls were not becoming what they needed, and they didn't realize they could modify the die roll by essentially adding the things they needed by spending this power resource, which they usually had in a pretty good abundance, especially considering you can gain power while you are rolling the dice in that night phase. I think this also stifled the quest gathering a bit because that's all about making these different patterns with your heroes out on the world map, and when a hero gets kind of locked into a temple, they don't make it all the way through the end in a night phase, well, that's really going to limit the options and things that you can do in the next day phase. Also, it means you're going to be slowed down and trying to gather, explore the temples to get new items that you just got quests for if you're still trying to get through the temple for that previous set. So I think it was a pretty good idea for how the game plays in general. I don't think this is a faulty playthrough in any way, but maybe it was slightly slower on the item acquisition and the quest gathering front. I did really like the push your luck elements, and I think that I maybe liked it a little bit too much for the blue player, especially on that, like, I think it was 3rd turn, where they just pushed their luck way too hard. And again, maybe they wouldn't have done that if they realized they could have spent a couple power earlier in that night phase to get a scroll or a torch. I can't remember exactly what they were going for in that moment, and they maybe wouldn't have depleted themselves so hard to then have kind of a skunked next day phase where they had to idle for 2 out of their 4 movements. And I think that is probably a big reason as to why they did so poorly at the end of the game. The scores were not close at all, and I would not put too much credence into that, mostly because, you know, this is the first full game that I have played. I just actually got this in the mail yesterday. I played a little bit of a demo game yesterday and then did the whole one today, so this is how all the gears click together, but it's not necessarily how they click together well. Especially when you consider the fact that I was spinning all these plates trying to remember what each player was trying to do, the patterns they were trying to go here, and then finally do this to cash in, and then I would go to the next player, and by the time I got back to a specific person, it spent quite a bit of brain power figuring out what they were trying to do, let alone what they maybe want to do in the future, and I'm sure I missed out on some pretty good alternate moves that were available. But I think that's going to wrap up all my thoughts for this game, Tiny Epic Quest, and I would love to thank everyone who has been supporting me through Patreon, including my producer level pledges. If you too would like to directly support these videos that I make, I would greatly appreciate it, and you could do so at patreon.com/JonGetsGames. Also, if you'd like to see more full game playthroughs, in-depth board game reviews, and vlogs, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.